The conference table. My business. 40 years of my life. The mediator's pen stopped moving, and I watched my brother's smile fade for the first time in 6 months. That moment of silence was the $3.5 million turning point of my entire life. That morning started like any other court day, but it felt like a surgical operation on my soul. For 3 weeks, I'd been trapped in mediation, forced to listen to Andrew, my own younger brother, calmly explain why he deserved half of Thompson Fine Woodworks. He wanted half of my business. And the terrifying part was, he might actually have a case. Half of the business that was 40 years of my blood and sweat. I'm telling this story because maybe it'll help someone else facing a family conflict. If my journey resonates, you know what to do. While I was hauling lumber, building a life from nothing with my hands in the Saskatoon dust, he was collecting his 3rd degree in Victoria. The irony of the situation was a slow, burning poison, the academic, the theorist, demanding a split of the tangible reality I had forged. The mediator, Margaret Wilson, seemed sympathetic to his case. Too sympathetic. I'd later find out why, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where this really began. Not 6 months ago when Andrew filed his lawsuit. Not even 3 years ago when our father died. This didn't start with the lawsuit. This started 4 decades ago, in 1985. I was 23, naive enough to believe in the simple, bedrock values of hard work and family loyalty. I was fresh out of my carpentry apprenticeship in Saskatoon. Dad was at the refinery, Mom was a school secretary, and we lived on the edge of comfort, but we were never truly comfortable. It was the last moment of pure, unquestioning faith I would ever have. My little brother, Andrew, was 14 then, already designated for greatness. My mother called him academically gifted. I just saw a kid who seemed allergic to the kind of dirt and effort that built a man's life. I had no idea that allergy would one day evolve into a $7 million betrayal. Dad pulled me aside one night after dinner. Michael, your brother's going places. University? Maybe graduate school. Smart kid. You know we can't afford to send you both to university. I nodded. I'd never been much for school anyway. I know, Dad, but you've got good hands. You're talented with wood. Why don't you start something of your own? I've got $10,000 saved up. It's yours if you want to build something. $10,000. In 1985, that was enough to buy tools, rent a small workshop, and survive for about 6 months if I was careful. I took it. I named the business Thompson Fine Woodworks, and I worked 70-hour weeks for the first 5 years. Kitchen cabinets, furniture restoration, custom built-ins for the new developments going up all over Saskatoon during the oil boom. By the time Andrew graduated high school, I was employing 3 people. By the time he finished his first degree at University of Victoria, I had 12 employees and had just landed my first commercial contract. By the time he got his PhD in economics, I'd built Thompson Fine Woodworks into the premier renovation and custom carpentry business in Saskatoon, with 38 employees and annual revenue of $5.2 million. I thought I was untouchable. I was wrong. Andrew became a professor of economics. Ironically, he taught at University of Victoria for 15 years, then at the University of Saskatchewan in Regina. He published papers about market efficiency and resource allocation. He never once asked about the business, never visited the workshop, never showed any interest in what I'd built. Dad was proud of both of us in different ways. My professor's son and my entrepreneur son. Dad would beam at family dinners, neatly labeling us. But over the years, a shadow began to stretch. When Andrew flew home for Christmas, Dad's eyes would hold a special kind of light, a pride they never quite held for me. When Andrew published another paper, a dense article on market efficiency, Dad would keep a copy right on his desk, a testament to intellectual glory. When I won the Saskatoon Small Business Excellence Award in 2008, Dad just offered a quick, "That's great, son," and immediately went back to reading Andrew's latest academic achievement. I wasn't complaining. I understood the unspoken hierarchy. Andrew was the shining success story, the abstract theoretical triumph. I was just the guy, solid and reliable, who worked with his hands. The dual grief arrived quietly. Mom was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in 2019. Dad became her caretaker for 3 years, until his heart simply gave out in March 2022. When Dad died, Andrew flew in from Regina, stayed for a prescribed 4 days, and then was gone. I was the one who stayed. I navigated the painful process of moving Mom into a memory care facility. I was the one there 3 times a week, witnessing her slow fade, and I was the one paying the $6,200 monthly fee because her needs were beyond what the public system could offer. Andrew's contribution was a neat, consistent $500 a month. Professor's salary, he'd casually dismiss it. Not like you, big, successful businessman. A stark, cynical contrast to the family legacy he would soon claim. Professor's salary, he'd say. Not like you, big, successful businessman. 6 months after Dad's funeral, Andrew called me. We need to talk about the business, Michael. I was in my truck heading home after a site visit. What about it? That promised half. I nearly drove off Circle Drive. What? Dad always said the business was for both of us. Family legacy. He told me that dozens of times over the years. Andrew, I built this business. Dad gave me $10,000 in 1985. That was his contribution. Everything else is 40 years of my life. Dad said it was a family business. Family, that includes me. Michael, you never worked a single day at Thompson Fine Woodworks. Doesn't matter. Dad's promise matters. I've been patient, Michael. I've let you run things, make decisions. But now it's time to formalize the arrangement. I want 50% ownership, and I want it in writing. I pulled the truck over into a Robin's Donuts parking lot. Andrew, are you serious? I asked, my voice thin. Dead serious, he'd replied, the calm certitude in his voice chilling me more than his words. I sat in that mundane, fluorescent-lit parking lot for an hour. I watched people flow in and out for their coffee and Timbits, their lives simple, their paths clear, and I, the successful entrepreneur, the grounded, hard-working brother, was sitting there watching my entire world, 40 years of sweat and certainty, being threatened by a phantom promise and my brother's professional jealousy. I was trying to process not just a legal threat, but the sudden, brutal realization that I had never truly known the man I called my brother. My little brother, who I'd watched grow up, who I'd helped pay for his second degree when things were tight, who'd never shown any interest in my business, was threatening to sue me. I called my wife, Sarah. We'd been married for 38 years, raised 2 kids who were now in their 30s with families of their own. He's bluffing, she said. Andrew is not that person. He's your brother. But he wasn't bluffing. 2 weeks later, I received a statement of claim from a law firm in Regina. Andrew was suing me for 50% ownership of Thompson Fine Woodworks, claiming that our father had made a verbal promise that the business would be split equally between his sons and that this promise constituted a binding agreement. He was also claiming $600,000 in back compensation for his theoretical ownership share over the past 10 years. The claim was 93 pages long. It painted me as a manipulative older brother who had exploited family resources and parental favoritism to build a business that rightfully belonged to both of us. It claimed I had systematically excluded Andrew from business decisions. It claimed Dad had repeatedly and consistently promised Andrew half the business with specific dates and conversations listed. I read it 3 times, feeling sicker each time. The dates were real. Christmas 2015, Thanksgiving 2018, Dad's 70th birthday in 2019. But the conversations, I had no memory of Dad ever saying anything like that, and I'd been at all those family gatherings. Surely I would have heard if Dad had promised Andrew half my business. I hired a lawyer, Laura Bennett, one of the best litigation attorneys in Saskatoon. Laura, my lawyer, read the 93-page statement of claim. She pursed her lips and confirmed my fear. This is going to be expensive, Michael. Andrew was demanding mandatory mediation first, standard for our size of dispute in Saskatchewan. My question was raw, primal. Can he win? Can you actually win a business with a verbal promise? She explained the cold, complex legal reality. It's difficult, but not impossible. If he can prove your father made a clear, specific promise that he relied on to his detriment, it's called promissory estoppel. The burden of proof is high, but if a judge believes your father made a binding promise, your 40 years of ownership records might not even matter. This was the call to a very different kind of adventure. A brutal, expensive war fought not with wood and tools, but with memory and doubt. The question is, did your father promise Andrew half the business? I thought about it. Dad had said the business is for my boys a few times over the years, usually when he'd had a couple of beers at Christmas, talking about legacy and family, but it was never specific. It was never Andrew, you own half. It was the vague sentimentality of an old man who wanted his sons to get along. Maybe, I admitted. Dad said some things over the years, but nothing specific, nothing legal. Laura nodded. That's what Andrew is counting on. The vagueness works in his favor. He can claim Dad meant ownership. You can claim Dad meant emotional legacy. It becomes, he said, she said, except your father isn't here to clarify. So, what do? We go to mediation and hope we can settle for something reasonable. If not, we prepare for trial. Start gathering any documentation you have, business records, incorporation papers, any letters or emails from your father, any witnesses who heard these alleged promises. I spent the next month going through 40 years of documents. I found the original $10,000 check from Dad dated October 1st, 1985. I found letters Dad had sent me over the years, mostly birthday cards and Christmas notes. One from 1995 said, "Proud of what you've built, son. You've created something special." Another from 2007 said, "Fine Woodworks is a testament to your hard work and vision." None mentioned Andrew. None mentioned sharing ownership. I called Mom's memory care facility and tried to talk to her about it. She was having a bad day. "Who are you?" she asked me. "Where's Robert?" Robert was my father. She'd been asking for him for 3 years. Mediation was scheduled for late November, almost a year after Dad's death. The mediator was Margaret Wilson, a 60-year-old former judge who specialized in family business disputes. She came highly recommended. The first session was in a bland conference room in a downtown Saskatoon office building. Andrew arrived with his lawyer, a sharp-dressed guy named Gregory Fletcher from Regina. They sat across from me and Laura like we were negotiating a corporate merger, not destroying a family. Margaret Wilson started with the standard mediator speech. "I'm here to help facilitate a resolution that both parties can live with. This isn't a courtroom. I can't force anyone to do anything, but I can help you find common ground." Andrew spoke first. His voice was calm, reasonable, the same voice he probably used when lecturing economics students. "Michael, I don't want this to be adversarial. We're brothers, but Dad made a promise, and I need you to honor it. He told me many times that the business was for both of us. He saw my academic career, saw that I wasn't making the kind of money you were making, and he wanted to balance things out. That was his wish." I stared at my brother. He looked sincere. That was the worst part. He genuinely seemed to believe this. "Andrew, I've been running Fine Woodworks for 40 years. You've never worked there? You've never even visited the workshop. When did this promise supposedly happen?" It wasn't a single conversation, Michael. It was years of conversations. Dad would talk to me about the business, about how it was a family asset, how he wanted both his sons to be taken care of. The specific times are in the claim. Christmas 2015. He sat me down and said, "Andrew, don't worry. The business will be there for you." Michael knows it's for both my boys. Thanksgiving 2018, same thing. His 70th birthday, he said it again. I was at all those events. I don't remember Dad saying that. You were busy talking to Sarah's family or dealing with the kids. These were private conversations, Michael. Father and son. Margaret Wilson intervened. Let's focus on finding a solution. Andrew, what would a fair resolution look like to you? 50% ownership formalized in legal documents. I'm willing to let Michael continue as CEO and handle day-to-day operations. I don't need to be involved in management, but I want my ownership stake recognized, and I want to start receiving 50% of the profits. Laura jumped in. That's absurd. Fine Woodworks generates roughly $850,000 in annual profit. You're asking for $425,000 a year for doing absolutely nothing. I'm asking for what my father promised me. I found my voice. Even if Dad said something like that, which I'm not conceding, wouldn't it make more sense to interpret it as me helping you out if you ever needed it? Not literally giving you half the business? What I said next was the mistake that would define the rest of our mediation. Andrew shook his head. Dad was specific, Michael. He said the business was for both of us, not help Andrew if he needs it. He said we were both owners. The first mediation session collapsed with no progress. Margaret Wilson, the mediator, scheduled 2 more sessions, extending this torture into the next month. Between those sessions, I couldn't sleep. I'd lie awake, staring at the dark ceiling, replaying every Christmas, every Thanksgiving Andrew had mentioned. It was a horrifying mental audit of 40 years of family gatherings. I'd search the echoes of Dad's words. Had he said something that, under the pressure of Alzheimer's and his own desire for family harmony, could be twisted into a legal promise? I'd been busy hosting, talking, perhaps a few beers in me. I wondered if, while I was being the good host, the foundation of my entire life was quietly being undermined by a vague, sentimental whisper. The vagueness worked for Andrew's claim. It was killing me. Sarah noticed. You're not eating. You're not sleeping. This is killing you. If I lose this case, I lose everything. The business is worth about $7 million. If Andrew gets half, I have to either buy him out for $3.5 million, which I don't have, or sell the business and split the money. Either way, Fine Woodworks is finished. Andrew wouldn't actually destroy the business. He's your brother. I don't think I know my brother anymore. The second mediation session was worse. Margaret Wilson seemed sympathetic to Andrew's position. She kept using phrases like family promises and moral obligations and your father's wishes. Michael, even if there's ambiguity in what your father said, don't you feel some obligation to honor his intent? He clearly wanted both his sons to benefit from the business. I felt my blood pressure rising. His intent was for me to build something and be successful, which I did. I've given Andrew help over the years. I helped pay for his second degree. I've covered Mom's care facility costs beyond what he contributes. I've been a good brother. But you've never offered him any stake in the business. Because it's my business. I built it. Every brick, every contract, every employee hired, every crisis survived. That was me. Not Dad, not Andrew. Me. Margaret Wilson looked disappointed in me. Family businesses often involve these kinds of informal arrangements. Michael, courts recognize that not everything needs to be written down. Sometimes a father's word to his son is enough. That's when I realized she'd already made up her mind. She thought Andrew deserved something. Maybe not 50%, but something substantial. And as a mediator, she was steering us toward that outcome. Laura noticed too. After the session, she pulled me aside. I don't like this. Wilson is showing bias. If she recommends a settlement and you reject it, that could look bad if we go to trial. Judges sometimes give weight to mediator recommendations. What do? We need evidence. Hard evidence. Something that shows your father did not intend Andrew to have ownership. Letters, documents, witnesses, anything. I spent another week digging through old files. I found business loans from the 1985 and 1990s, all in my name only. I found the original business registration from 1985. I found tax returns going back 40 years, all showing me as the sole proprietor, then after incorporation in 1995, the sole shareholder. But I also found something else, a letter from Dad dated 2010, in a box of old personal papers. It was addressed to me, handwritten in Dad's messy scroll. Michael, just wanted you to know how proud I am. Fine Woodworks is proof that hard work and dedication pay off. You took my $10,000 and turned it into something remarkable. That's all you, son. Your vision, your sweat, your success. Keep building. Love, Dad. I read it 5 times. That's all you, son. Your vision, your sweat, your success. Not your and Andrew's success. Not our family business, your success. I brought the letter to Laura. She smiled. This is good, Michael. This is very good. It shows your father viewed the business as yours, not as a family asset. I finally felt like I had a weapon. Tell me in the comments, has a piece of paper ever saved your life? The third mediation session was scheduled for December 15th, 2 weeks before Christmas, 1 year and 9 months since Dad died. That morning, I arrived early. I sat in my truck in the parking lot holding Dad's letter in my hand. I thought about calling Andrew, trying one more time to reason with him before we went inside. But what would I say? We'd already said everything. I walked into the conference room. Andrew was already there looking confident. Gregory Fletcher was reviewing some documents. Margaret Wilson was setting up her laptop. We sat down. Laura placed Dad's letter on the table. Before we begin, she said, I'd like to introduce new evidence. This is a letter from Robert Thompson to Michael, dated June 2010. I'll read the relevant portion. She read Dad's words aloud. The part about your vision, your sweat, your success. Andrew's face didn't change, but I saw his lawyer lean over and whisper something to him. Margaret Wilson frowned. That's certainly interesting, but it's from 2010. Andrew's claim involves statements made between 2015 and 2019. Your father's views could have changed. Laura nodded. Certainly possible, but it establishes a pattern. Robert Thompson viewed Fine Woodworks as Michael's business, Michael's success, not a family asset. One letter doesn't disprove years of verbal promises, Gregory Fletcher said. Perhaps not, Laura replied, but let's talk about those verbal promises. Andrew claims his father made specific statements on specific dates. Christmas 2015, Thanksgiving 2018, Robert Thompson's 70th birthday in March 2019. He claims these were private conversations, just father and son. That's correct, Andrew said. Laura opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. I've subpoenaed Robert Thompson's medical records from his family physician, Dr. James Wilson, covering the period from 2014 to his death in 2022. Margaret Wilson looked up sharply. Medical records. What does this have to do with Robert Thompson was diagnosed with early-stage Alzheimer's disease in November 2014. Dr. Wilson's notes indicate cognitive decline beginning in 2013 with formal diagnosis in late 2014. The family was informed the recommended treatment plan included monitoring, medication, and Laura flipped through papers. Family members should document any major decisions or promises as patient may experience confusion about previous statements. The room went silent. Andrew found his voice. That's not, Dad didn't have Alzheimer's. Mom did. Your mother was diagnosed in 2019. Laura said your father was diagnosed 5 years earlier, the family was told. Were you not informed, Andrew? I remembered. The doctor's appointment in 2014 just before Christmas. Dad had asked me to come with him. Early stages. Dr. Wilson had said he'll have good days and bad days, might repeat stories, might forget recent conversations, but he's still capable of managing his affairs for now. I'd been the one handling Dad's affairs after that. The bills, the prescriptions, Eventually, the decision to move Mom into care when Dad could no longer manage. I'd thought Andrew knew about Dad's diagnosis, but he'd been in Regina visiting maybe 3 times a year. Maybe I'd never explicitly told him. Maybe I'd assumed Mom had mentioned it. The Christmas 2015 conversation Andrew describes Robert Thompson's medical notes from December 2015 indicate he was experiencing increased confusion and short-term memory loss. The doctor specifically noted that Robert was struggling to distinguish recent events from past events and was occasionally making statements inconsistent with reality. Laura pulled out more pages. Thanksgiving 2018. Robert Thompson had a medical emergency 3 weeks prior, a minor stroke. Hospital records show temporary cognitive impairment. His doctor noted patient experiencing disorientation and confabulation. March 2019, Robert's 70th birthday. By this point, Robert Thompson's Alzheimer's had progressed to moderate stage. Dr. Wilson's notes from February 2019 state, patient should not be making financial or legal decisions without family oversight. Cognitive functions significantly impaired. Andrew was white. I didn't know. Dad seemed fine at those gatherings. He was talking, joking, remembering stories. Alzheimer's patients often seem fine in social situations, Laura said, not unkindly. They can mask symptoms, especially early on, but the medical evidence is clear. Your father was not cognitively capable of making binding promises during the time period you describe, and even if he said something, a promise made by someone with documented cognitive impairment cannot form the basis of a legal claim. Margaret Wilson was reading the medical records, her expression changing. I wasn't aware of this diagnosis. This significantly changes the analysis. Gregory Fletcher was speed reading through the documents. Even if Robert Thompson had cognitive issues, that doesn't automatically invalidate everything he said. If he made these promises before the diagnosis was 2014. Laura said the promises Andrew claims were made between 2015 and 2019, well after diagnosis. And the letter I presented earlier from 2010 shows that before his illness, Robert Thompson explicitly viewed the business as Michael's alone. I looked at my brother. He was staring at the table, his confidence gone. Andrew, I said quietly, did Dad really say those things, or did you hear what you wanted to hear? He looked up, and for the first time in months, I saw my little brother instead of my adversary. He said it, Michael. I swear he did. Christmas 2015. We were in the kitchen, just the two of us. He put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Don't worry, Andrew. The business is for both my boys. Michael knows it's going to be there for you. I remember it clearly. I believe you remember it." I said, "But Dad had Alzheimer's, Andrew." He was confused. Maybe he was thinking about the $10,000 he gave me, and somehow, in his confused mind, thought that meant the business belonged to both of us. Maybe he was trying to make you feel better about your professor salary. But it wasn't a promise. It wasn't real. Andrew's eyes were wet. He said it every time I visited. Every Christmas, every Thanksgiving. He'd pull me aside and tell me not to worry, that I'd be taken care of, that the business was ours. I thought it meant something. It meant Dad loved you. I said it meant he wanted you to feel secure, but it wasn't a legal promise, and it wasn't reality. Margaret Wilson cleared her throat. Given this new medical evidence, I don't think mediation is likely to result in a settlement favorable to Andrew's position. If this goes to trial, a judge will almost certainly find that Robert Thompson lacked capacity to make binding promises during the relevant time period. Gregory Fletcher was already packing his briefcase. I need to consult with my client. We took a break. Laura and I went to a coffee shop across the street. My hands were shaking as I ordered a coffee. "Did you know about your father's diagnosis?" Laura asked. "I knew. I've been managing it for so long it became normal. I didn't think about how it affected conversations from years ago. I didn't think Andrew didn't know. He had to have known. Michael, your mother was diagnosed later, moved into care. Your father's condition had to have been discussed. Andrew was in Regina. He visited maybe 3 times a year. Phone calls every couple of weeks. Maybe I thought someone else told him. Maybe I just assumed. Or maybe he knew and didn't want to remember because it complicated his claim. I didn't want to believe that. I wanted to believe my brother had genuinely misunderstood that he'd heard Dad's confused ramblings and thought they were promises. We went back to the conference room. Andrew and his lawyer were already there. Andrew looked smaller somehow, deflated. Gregory Fletcher spoke first. In light of the medical evidence presented, we're prepared to discuss a settlement. Andrew is no longer pursuing an ownership claim. However, we believe there's still a moral obligation to acknowledge the family contribution to the business. We're proposing a one-time payment of $500,000 in recognition of Robert Thompson's initial investment and family legacy. Laura scoffed. You mean in recognition of Andrew's failed lawsuit? That's not happening. Michael, Andrew said, ignoring the lawyers. Dad gave you $10,000 in 1985. Adjusted for inflation, that's about $24,000 in today's dollars. The business is worth $7 million. Dad's investment started all of this. Don't I deserve something for that? You want me to pay you $500,000 because Dad gave me $10,000 40 years ago. Money I paid back 100 times over in helping you with your education, in covering Mom's care costs, in being the son who actually stayed in Saskatoon and looked after our parents. I want recognition that this isn't just your success. It's built on family support. Every business is built on family support. Every success story starts with someone helping someone else, but that doesn't mean you own my business. Margaret Wilson tried to mediate, perhaps a smaller amount, a gesture of family goodwill. I felt something snap inside me. No. Everyone looked at me. No, I repeated. I'm not paying Andrew anything. Not $500,000, not $50,000, not $5,000. You know why? Because this lawsuit has cost me over $92,000 in legal fees so far. It's cost me sleep, stress, and nearly a year of my life. It's damaged my relationship with my brother, maybe permanently. And for what? Because Dad, in his confusion, said some vague things about family that Andrew twisted into a claim of ownership. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. You want to talk about family contribution? Let's talk numbers. 2019 to 2025, Mom's memory care costs $446,400. I paid $400,000 of that. You paid $36,000. That's money I pulled out of the business, out of my own retirement savings to care for our mother while you sent your $500 monthly check and visited twice a year. I scrolled through more records. Your second master's degree, 1994 to 1996. When your funding fell through, I loaned you $18,000. You paid back $5,000. That was 30 years ago, Andrew. I never asked for the rest. Michael Andrews started. I'm not done. 2008, when you were between academic jobs and couldn't make your mortgage payment, I sent you $12,000. 2015, when your car died and you needed a down payment on a new one, $6,000. 2020, during CO, when the university cut your salary by 20%, I sent you $1,500 a month for 8 months. That's $12,000 more. I put my phone down. I've given you over $450,000 over the past 30 years, Andrew. I didn't just say it. I hammered the number into the silence. Some of it was loans, never fully repaid. Most of it was simply gifts. If this part of the story shocked you, hit the share button. This is the hidden cost of family. I'll see you in the next video. I never kept a ledger. I never asked for it back, because that's what family does. My voice cracked with the sheer weight of the betrayal. But now you're sitting here demanding $500,000 more because Dad's Alzheimer's made him say confused things about a business you've never contributed to. The man who claimed family loyalty was attempting to extort the man who had actually lived it. The room was silent, a vast, echoing space where our broken relationship lay exposed. Andrew's voice was barely a whisper. I didn't remember all that. Of course you didn't, because I never made you remember. I never held it over your head. I helped because you're my brother, but apparently that means nothing to you. Gregory Fletcher stood up. I think we're done here. Andrew, we should discuss your options. There are no options, Laura said. If you proceed to trial, Michael will present the medical evidence, the business records, and documentation of his financial support to Andrew over decades. No judge in Saskatchewan will rule in your favor. You'll lose, and you'll be responsible for Michael's legal costs, which are currently $92,000 and climbing. Andrew stood up slowly. The confident, sharp-suited academic who had sued me for $3.5 million dissolved. He looked at me, and for a fleeting, heartbreaking moment, I saw my little brother again, the 14-year-old kid in my memory, looking up to me with that mix of awe and aspiration. The image was a devastating visual juxtaposition, the shadow of the greedy adversary replaced by the ghost of the vulnerable sibling. I'm sorry, Michael, he whispered. Dad said those things, and I wanted them to be true. I wanted there to be some security for me, some meaning in the family business. But my wound was still too fresh, too deep. You could have just asked, Andrew, I said, the quiet statement carrying the weight of 40 years. If you'd come to me and said, Michael, I'm struggling. Can you help? I would have helped. I always have. But you didn't ask. You demanded. You sued me. I know. He looked at his lawyer. Gregory, withdraw the lawsuit. It's over. Andrew, I'd advise you too. It's over. My brother's right. I let Dad's confused ramblings become something they weren't. I convinced myself I deserved half of something I never built. He looked back at me. I'm sorry, Michael. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just want you to know I'm sorry. He walked out. Gregory Fletcher gathered his papers and followed. Margaret Wilson looked uncomfortable. I apologize, Michael. I should have investigated the family circumstances more thoroughly before forming initial impressions. I nodded. She left. Laura was grinning. That's what we call a complete victory. But it didn't feel like victory. It felt like I just lost my brother. Sarah was waiting when I got home. I told her everything. She held my hand and didn't say anything for a long time. Are you okay? She finally asked. I don't know. I won, but I feel like I lost something bigger. Your brother, my family, Dad's gone. Mom doesn't remember who I am half the time. And now Andrew and I don't know if we can come back from this. He apologized. He apologized after his lawyer told him he couldn't win. That's not real remorse. That's just accepting defeat. Sarah squeezed my hand. People are complicated, Michael. Maybe Andrew really did misunderstand. Maybe Dad's Alzheimer's created this whole situation. Maybe your brother isn't a villain, just someone who made a mistake. I thought about that for days. Christmas came. Andrew didn't call. I didn't call him either. I sent him a card just like I'd done every year since we were kids. He didn't send one back. 3 weeks later, I got a letter, handwritten on Andrew's university letterhead. Michael, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I've been doing a lot of thinking since the mediation ended. I talked to my therapist, to some colleagues who are also family dispute mediators, trying to understand what happened. I think I created a narrative in my head based on Dad's confused statements, and I convinced myself it was real because I wanted it to be real. I wanted to feel like I mattered, like I was part of your success. That was selfish and wrong. I should have been proud of you, should have celebrated what you built instead of trying to claim credit for it. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know I'm in therapy. I'm working on understanding why I did this. and I'll spend the rest of my life regretting that I hurt you. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. Your brother, Andrew. I read the letter 3 times. I showed it to Sarah. What do you think? I asked. I think he means it. I think he's horrified by what he did and he's trying to make amends. Is sorry enough? I don't know. That's up to you. I didn't call Andrew. Not that day, not that week, but I kept the letter. 2 months later, in March 2025, I got a call from the memory care facility. Mom had passed away peacefully in her sleep. I called Andrew. He answered on the first ring. Michael, Mom died this morning. Silence. Then I'll be there tomorrow. What do you need me to do? We planned the funeral together. We divided the tasks. I handled the funeral home and service arrangements. He handled the obituary and contacted relatives. We were efficient, professional, like business partners. We didn't talk about the lawsuit. At the funeral, Andrew sat next to me. During the eulogy, he started crying. I put my hand on his shoulder, the way Dad used to do to both of us when we were kids. After the service, we stood together by Mom's casket. I'm sorry, Andrew said. Not just for the lawsuit, for everything, for not being here more when Mom was sick, for not helping more with Dad, for being the son who left and expected you to handle everything. I don't want to talk about the lawsuit today, Andrew. I know. I need you to know I regret it. I regret all of it. We buried Mom next to Dad at Woodlawn Cemetery in Saskatoon, the same cemetery where we'd buried grandparents, aunts, uncles, family land, Sarah called it. A week later, Andrew called me. Can we have coffee? Just talk. We met at a Robin's Donuts, the same chain where I'd sat a year earlier, processing his lawsuit. We ordered coffee and sat across from each other. I've been thinking about Dad's letter, Andrew said. The one from 2010. Your vision, your sweat, your success. That's what it said, right? Yeah, he was right. It was all you. And I tried to take that away from you because I was jealous. I stirred my coffee. Why were you jealous? You had a good career, a good life. I was the smart son, the educated one, the one who was supposed to do great things. But you're the one who built something real, something that employs people, that creates value, that will exist after you're gone. I wrote papers that 12 people read. You built fine woodworks. Your papers mattered, Andrew. You taught hundreds of students. It wasn't enough. It was never enough. And when Dad started getting confused, started saying things about the business being for both of us, I latched onto it. I created this whole story in my head where I deserved half because Dad had always wanted to balance things between us. It was delusional. Maybe not delusional. Maybe just human. Andrew looked at me. Can we start over? Not forget what happened, but start building something new? I don't want to lose my brother over this. I thought about Dad's confused promises, about Andrew's lawsuit, about the year of stress and $92,000 in legal fees. I thought about 40 years of building a business, of being the son who stayed, of taking care of our parents. I don't know if we can go back to what we were, I admitted, my voice heavy with the truth. Honestly, that trust is broken, maybe permanently. We both knew the damage was not just to the business, but to the very foundation of our brotherhood. But, I added, offering a fragile olive branch, maybe we can figure out what we can be now. It was the beginning of building a new road, knowing we couldn't rebuild the bridge that had been burned. We talked for 2 hours, not about the lawsuit, but about Mom, Dad, our children, the future. Some wounds take a very long time to heal, but sitting there, across from him at that ordinary Robin's Donuts table, felt like a start. A month later, I did something I never thought I'd do. I called Andrew and made him an offer. I'm thinking about retirement. I told him, I'm 63. I've been doing this for 40 years. I'm tired. My knees hurt. I want to travel with Sarah while we still can. That makes sense. I'm going to transition the business to my senior managers over the next 5 years, sell them shares gradually, let them buy me out. But before I do that, I want to set up a scholarship fund at the University of Saskatchewan. $120,000 to start for carpentry and trade students who want to start their own businesses. I'd like to name it the Robert Thompson Memorial Scholarship. Andrew was quiet for a moment. That's beautiful, Michael. I'd like you to help administer it. You're the academic. You know how university scholarships work. It would be a way for both of us to honor Dad's memory together. I'd be honored. Really? There's a condition, though. What? You have to come to the workshop, actually see the business you tried to take half of, meet the people who work there, understand what I built. I'd like that. He came the following week. I gave him a tour of Thompson Fine Woodworks, showed him the workshop where we built custom cabinets, the showroom where clients came to see our work, the offices where my managers planned projects. He met my employees, some of whom had been with me for 20 years. At the end of the tour, Andrew looked at me. I didn't understand. I really didn't. This isn't just a business. It's 40 years of relationships, of craftsmanship, of your life. It's what Dad's $10,000 became when someone actually put in the work. I'm sorry. I tried to take it. I know you are. We set up the Robert Thompson Memorial Scholarship that summer. The inaugural recipient was a young woman from Grande Prairie aspiring to launch a custom furniture business. At the award ceremony, Andrew and I stood together on stage, and for the first time in 2 years, we looked like brothers again. Not the brothers we'd been before the lawsuit. Those brothers were gone, but maybe something better. Brothers who had been through fire and come out scarred, but still standing. Sarah asked me once if I forgave Andrew. I thought about it for a long time before answering. I forgive him for being human, I said, for being jealous, for being weak, for making a mistake. But I can't forget what he did. I can't forget the year of stress, the feeling of being betrayed by my own brother, the realization that family loyalty has limits. I forgive him, but things will never be the same. Is that enough? It has to be, because the alternative is losing him completely, and I don't want that either. Andrew and I talk every couple of weeks now. We have dinner once a month. We're working on the scholarship together. We visited Mom's grave on what would have been her 85th birthday. We're building something new, something different from what we had before. But I keep Dad's letter from 2010 in my desk drawer, your vision, your sweat, your success. On hard days when the old anger resurfaces, I read it and remember the business was mine. I built it, and no amount of revisionist history or confused promises can change that. Thompson Fine Woodworks will be sold to my managers in 2030. I'll retire, travel with Sarah, spend time with my grandchildren. The business will continue under new ownership, new vision. That feels right. And Andrew will be in my life in whatever capacity we can manage. Not as close as we once were, but not completely lost either. Somewhere in between. Because that's what family is in the end. Not perfection, not unconditional trust, not fairy tales, just people doing their best, making mistakes, hurting each other, and trying to find a way forward. Anyway, I'm 63 years old. And from this vantage point, having navigated the wreckage of a brotherhood, I see not a business dispute, but a profound and painful psychological crucible. What Michael endured was the shattering of his most fundamental human contract, the unspoken loyalty of family. Andrew's lawsuit was never about the woodworks. It was a desperate, misguided attempt to find a sense of self-worth and significance equal to the realness Michael had built. His jealousy wasn't hatred, it was unacknowledged pain. The real victory wasn't the legal one, it was Michael's slow, agonizing journey toward forgiveness without forgetting. He chose the arduous path of building a new relationship over the seductive, simplicity of cutting Andrew out entirely. He traded the heavy burden of perfected trust for the lighter, more realistic connection of mutual effort, seen beautifully in the shared legacy of the Robert Thompson Memorial Scholarship. This is the essence of healing, accepting the irreparable break, but choosing to suture the pieces into a new, stronger pattern. You too have tangled, painful relationships in your life. Perhaps a friend who betrayed you, a relative whose words cut too deep, or a conflict that left you scarred. Let Michael's journey be your map. Don't wait for a crisis or a final breakdown to start building your new road. Stop clutching the ledger of old hurts and the fantasy of what your relationship should be. Instead, take one small, deliberate step toward defining what it can be now. The truest measure of life is not what you build, but what you choose to rebuild after it's been torn down. Start building, even if it's just a conversation.